and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. We're a team meeting to discuss everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from Idaho Falls today, doing some business and having fun in the sun, all that good stuff. And we are super excited on our midweek podcast today to have Todd Bockness on our podcast. He has an incredible health story, health journey, and he's going to discuss that with us. And it really just hits home with some of the stuff that we've been preaching for the last few years on Health Solutions. The carnivore diet is a great diet for any kind of health-related problem. So, Todd, welcome to our show.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it. It's great meeting you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And just introduce yourself and tell us kind of how you came to be on this podcast.
Yeah, well, my name is Todd Bockness. I'm 41. I actually saw your podcast and was introduced to you guys through Sean Baker, actually, when he was on your podcast a while back. I was just in Texas with Sean, actually.
Yeah, the Hack Your Health, right?
Yep, exactly.
And awesome. Yeah.
Yep, and that's how I was made aware of your guys' channel, and I really liked your perspective from being a pharmacist. So that's like, when you contact me, it's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So,
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your history. You struggled with weight since you were a kid, correct? And I think your family did too when you were talking off the air. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and I'm the biggest of 6 kids, so which is kind of funny, right? Because now I believe that it's what do you call it, prenatal insulin resistance or whatever, insulin resistant infants. I think that's what actually was the issue, because I was just always so big. I was 600 pounds, by the time I was 14 years old. I was, a couple hundred pounds when I was like 6, 7 years old. Wow. I just was always huge, and but my oldest brother's 21 years older than me, and he was skinny as a rail, and then as mom kept having kids, they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And after reading Jason Fung's book about the insulin set point and about how we have insulin resistant infants and what insulin resistance does to your metabolic system and how you put on weight and your inability to, metabolize fat as stored body fat as fuel, I started looking into that, and I'm like, that held some weight, because when my older brothers were conceived and mom carried their pregnancies, she was eating a totally different diet. But then as they came along, food got processed, introduced to more sugar, more processed, hyper palatable foods, and her diet increased, her weight went up, and, in line, so did we, because, my top weight was around 715, 720 pounds. My brother before me, he passed away at 38, but he was about 350 pounds. My sister was before him about 300 pounds, and, like, you just watched it get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I really do think that a big cause of that is insulin resistance from being, from the infant's pancreas dealing with massive, adult size glucose spikes in the womb. I think that's what that's from.
It's very important to stress that I've seen diabetics that, manifest, and their mom was a gestational diabetic. So you have to, it's important what the mom eats. That's just, those are just facts. And I mean, one of the problems is now, Todd, is we've had, a few generations of eating processed food. So that's why obesity is epidemic in this country, because, their mothers ate bad too. And then they don't eat any better when they're born either. So that it makes it very, very tough.
It does. And, I get a lot of people. I have a YouTube channel and I make videos, and I get a lot of people when they hear my story go, how could you ever let yourself get to 700 pounds? And I'm like, well, the thing about it is that if we don't fix this, insulin resistant infant problem, I'm not going to be such the outlier anymore. Like I know a lot of people that, are 500, 600, 700 pounds now, and it's becoming sadly way too common, right? This shouldn't be, like I am a picture of the future if we don't change our habits here. We don't fix our food environment. This is not going to be an outlier anymore, It's becoming more and more common, unfortunately.
Well, we had a guy on our podcast a few years ago that was about your weight. He ended up being 705 pounds. And, people would ask that question, how can you get to be 705 pounds? So I did the math, and he was big in high school too. So, cause I went to high school with him, and I don't think he was 300, but he was well over 200. And we just did the math. So, from 250 to get to 750, 500 pounds, it's really only a couple pounds a month, pounds a month for 20, 30 years. That's how you get to be 700 pounds, right? 100%.
Yeah. And, for me, it's so funny, everything that I've learned. This has been such a crazy ride, but I'm a member at the Steak and Butter Gang. I don't know if you know who they are, Bill, the Steak and Butter gal. But she has a carnivore group that I think is the largest carnivore group on the internet, actually, as far as like coaching group and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And what's crazy about it is that I joined the Steak and Butter Gang when I was 9 months into carnivore. So that was about 10 months ago now. And I did it because I met Limitless Lindy. I don't know if you know Limitless Lindy's story.
Yeah, we've interviewed her.
Yeah, because we do a show every Sunday now together called 700 Plus and Counting Down. But I spoke when I met her, when we were talking, she had gone through the Steak and Butter Gang, and that's where she had gotten her coaching and kind of did it. Where I had found carnivore on my own, and I had been doing BBB&E and OMADs for at the time that I met her about 7.5 months, and I started to stall out. I was getting tired. I was losing the carnivore energy that I had in the first 7 months, and the scale wasn't going down anymore. I'd lost about 200 pounds at that time in about 7 months, 205 pounds, I think, to be exact. But the scale was stalling out. So that old diet brain of mine started cutting calories even more. And I was down to like 1,400 calories a day. And was, nothing was moving. I was getting real tired. Couldn't sleep. It was screwing up a lot of things. And so at month 9, I went and joined the Steak and Butter Gang, and they have something there called priming, a priming protocol, which is where you actually eat to boost your metabolism, basically, and eat to nourish your body. And it brings up your metabolic rate so that your body feels safe. Your body doesn't think you're in a famine or a food shortage, and it'll get rid of some weight and kind of just heal the body. And so the crazy thing was that I found out was you can be 700 pounds and the problem's still malnourishment. And that's what's so insane about it, right? Because I put on all this weight through drinking soda. I didn't eat all that much. I could, I had the ability to eat and had a big appetite and stuff. But usually even when I was on the standard American diet, I was eating, but I was drinking all my calories. I was doing it because I only made energy. So I lived on rock stars and monsters and iced coffees and soda, That's where I gained all the weight. It wasn't in food, because my body didn't make energy out of fat, and my body didn't feel good out of protein even. I felt sluggish and bloated, and so what I felt good on was sugar. That's what I would drink all the time. That was all. I get a spike energy, and then I crash, and I just repeat that process, and that's how I lived for years,
Yeah, I remember Limitless Lindy talking about calling it overfed and undernourished. And that's exactly what it is.
It is. And then, because what was crazy was then I started, I just did 9 months of OMAD with no problem, right? And then I went through the priming protocol at SBG for 5 weeks. And I was my appetite picked up so crazy that it was time to test and see if I was nourished to go back to doing an OMAD. And I thought, oh, I just did 9 months of OMAD, no problem. I was so hungry, I almost ate my pillow that night. Like in my sleep, I was so hungry because my body finally was calling out for nourishment. It finally found out that it was available to me. I was in a, an environment that it was available to, and it had bumped up my metabolism. My body just wanted to heal, and it wanted this nourishment. And it took me 6.5 months, and I was eating 6,000 to 7,000 calories of meat a day for 6 to 7.5 months. During that time, I gained 21 pounds of muscle, lost 3 shirt sizes, and felt better than I have in my whole life. And what was really crazy was everything started to heal during that. My eyes healed. I had diabetic retinal edema in my eyes, completely healed up. I thought my eyes were getting worse because I couldn't see anything. And it turned out that I just needed to go get new glasses because my eyes had healed up so much that I was like 4 prescriptions off now just in 7 months of that. And so I had to go get new glasses. My optometrist even came in because I was just in there 7 months earlier, and he goes, "Were you just in here 7 months ago?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "The scans we have on file for your eyes, your eyes now look like 2 different eyes. Like we're not even looking at the same person. You have 0 diabetic retinal edema. Your retinals have thickened, and your arteries or veins in your eyes have thickened, and your eyes are healthy now." It's crazy, And so I even had him write me an email showing that. But then I was missing 1/3 of my eyebrows, which I didn't know was from hyperthyroidism back then. But my eyebrows grew back during that time. My hair I lost my hair when I was 18 years old and always been bald, my hair started growing back. Like I had no idea that was even possible. And my hair started growing back, which all were pointed to signs of, since I was 18, of being highly malnourished.
Undernourished. Yeah.
Exactly. And I had no idea that any of this was even a thing.
Todd, I got it. Sorry to interrupt you. You got to admire Carnivore Amy.
Hey, Amy.
Read her comment. Todd has sexy eyebrows. I love it. She's been lighting up our feed with comments. Thank you, Amy, for commenting.
That's hilarious.
Well, it is.
She's a coach at the SBG gang as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I will tell you, Jan and I both being pharmacists, we were indoctrinated about how good medicine is. And, basically to cure any disease, you need medication. And so I hear your story, and I'm not surprised because we've changed our model a long time ago. But it's just a reminder how our bodies will heal themselves if we give it the right input. We don't need some kind of magic drug. I mean, let's think about it. Steak has been out for how long have we been eating red meat? For thousands and thousands of years, right, Todd? 100%. I mean, so how can it be bad for us, even though we were taught in pharmacy school that red meat's bad for us? That just does not make sense evolutionarily wise. We would not be sustained as a species if red meat was bad for us.
Nope.
Same thing with butter, if butter was bad for us. Yet, your hypothyroidism, and you told me earlier off air, you had, when you were in the hospital during COVID and almost died, they prescribed a bunch of medications, and you refused to go on them, and you just changed your diet.
For sure. Yeah. And that was the thing, this isn't the first time that I've been on a diet. This is what's so funny about, I love some of the comments that I get on my videos. People go, "It's not the meat that's healing you. It's the fact that you're not eating as much because you're eating meat, and you're not eating the hyper palatable foods." And there's some truth to that, but not really. But what's funny is that people think that I just got to 39 years old and then for the first time thought about changing my diet. It's like, no, this is not why I'm such a proponent for carnivore. The reason why that I tout this from the rooftops is because I've been on diet since I was 14, 15 years old. I've lost 300 pounds twice in my life before and 200 pounds twice in my life before and gained it all back all 4 times, plus some. Got sicker because of it. And so I've tried every diet. The thing is that carnivore, everything else before it was a restriction. Carnivore is the opposite of that. Carnivore is nourishing. And when you feed the body heals itself. It heals the hormones, heals the mitochondria, it heals your metabolic system. And then your body can function properly because you're finally giving it the fuel that it was meant to have. Nobody ever told me, they just would tell, like, I don't know why, maybe it's just the way my brain works. But when I found out that you eat not only for fuel, but for building blocks, and you can give yourself a bunch of nutriently deficient fuel that it has to store that's just causing problems, and your body's still going to be screaming for nourishment. I didn't know that. Nobody ever told me that. None of my doctors told me that. They didn't talk to me about that. They just told me to restrict, to eat less, that I might have, they sit there and tell me that I might have a psychological disorder or something, that I'm eating through, pain or whatever. And it's like, it was all nonsense. I was metabolically, it was a physiological problem that I had to fix. And I also struggled with suicidal depression for 30 years and absolute crippling anxiety. And then for the first 3.5 weeks, that was completely gone. And I thought it was
something. I mean, how many people are on drugs for depression and for anxiety, and all they need to do is change their diet?
For sure. We need the animal fat
all the time. I don't think anybody should be on antidepressants long term, maybe even short term, and anxiety medications long term, not even maybe. Change your diet, change your lifestyle. You don't need drugs.
100%. And that is the lie, right? They want to make it so complicated. And I don't know, I go through this a lot, but I'm just a dumb electrician from Montana. I figured it out myself. And if I can figure it out, then I don't think that it's just ignorance anymore. I think that there's a big corporation, big food, big pharma plan here in place. That
I totally agree with that statement from the viewpoint of, I grew up in rural North Dakota. My dad ranched and had cattle. So if your livestock is ill, you always look at the input, right?
What are they eating?
The environment, the food. And that's even when you take your pet into your vet, they will talk to you about nutrition. So why is it that we can treat animals better than humans? I mean, so there has to be an underlying thing. And I think the dollar thing is follow the money. You're right on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was what really started freeing me, because, when I was younger and I was failing all these diets, I just thought I was broken, especially with the poor mental health that was going on at the time. I was like, all right, something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm doing something wrong. I don't have the willpower other people do. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough, whatever. I'm just screwing up. Right. And then finally, when I started finding, some stuff went on when I was in 2016, my brother, we were all working in North Dakota in the Bakken, actually.
Oh,
and because we're electricians and we have a family owned, my brother owns an electrical contracting company I work for, and we're all electricians, and we were working in Dickinson, North Dakota at the time. And we were wiring a bunch of oil buildings out there for a company. And we all got a nasty cold virus. And Ty, my brother, went into the urgent care in Dickinson, North Dakota, and they screwed up. And they gave him prednisone, but the problem was they gave him prednisone for like 12 days. And they were only supposed to give it to him, I guess, for 5 days. So you guys would know this, but I guess you're only supposed to take steroid for up to 5 days if you have an active virus. Well, for some reason, that stupid urgent care prescribed him for 12 days. And Ty took prednisone for 12 days. Well, that turned into an infection because that knocked out his immune system. His virus went and caused a lung infection that spread to his heart. And that ultimately killed him. It took out his heart because he got a heart infection, and it killed him. And then 11 days later, my dad died too from leukemia. So 2016 was a bad year for all that. Well, 2017 actually. 2016 is when that stuff happened to Ty, but he lived for a while, and then his heart gave out after that because it caused so much damage. But Yeah, after that, I was just mad, and I started looking at things. And one of the things I found was Gary Taub and Dr. Robert Lustig, and they started painting the picture of how you can only sway behavior of 74% of an 8 billion population if there's an environmental change, if there's an environmental shift. Like there's nothing you can do to compel the behavioral change of that many people without an environmental issue going on, without changing the environment. And so that was the first time I started looking at it going, oh, maybe this isn't me, maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe, I'm sure I have a part to play in this, but maybe there's other things at play. And then I started looking at it that 70% of the population of the planet is obese or overweight, and it's like, and that's new. That's new in the last 100 years, It's like, okay, well, and then you start reading these things and you start thinking back, and one of the most ridiculous things is now people come in my channel and say, well, we don't have the reason, we haven't done studies on meat. I'm like, we haven't done studies on meat? We've been doing studies on meat for about 6,500 years at least.
Right. I love it. I love it when people ask Dr. Shawn Baker that question. Hey, where are the studies on this? And he says, oh, I don't know, 6,000 years of evolution. And that's really, I mean, seriously, just think rational about it. Anybody that's listening and watching right now, if your doctor tells you not to eat red meat or not to eat eggs or not to eat butter, get a new doctor. They are not educated well. And just think rationally about it. If those things were bad for us, we would have died many years ago as humans.
We wouldn't be here.
Right. And not only did we used to thrive, but it's been the last 50 or 60 years since we stopped eating that stuff where we've been sick. And what does that mean? That means we go to more doctors, we go to more specialists, we take more drugs. It's exactly what the healthcare system wants. And tell us your story, Todd. You told us about your brother and your dad sadly passing away, but that kind of a bingo light went on with you and realized that seeing specialists and going on all these drugs is not a way to extend your life. Tell us about that story.
It did. Yeah. I just, I was at a point, I mean, honestly, that was a bad time in my life. It was, our business was struggling. Economy was kind of rough at the time. That was right after the housing market collapsed. We went to North Dakota, was working, and then all of a sudden the oil collapsed at about that.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was a stressful time in our business life. I got divorced right in there. Then my dad died, my brother died, and so the suicidal depression took over, and I was planning on checking out of here early, to be honest with you. And but I look back, I finally found some clarity in kind of the middle of it all and saw what I was going to leave behind. And so I was really at a crossroads. I was like, well, I can't live this way anymore. So something's got to change. And that was the day that I was just resolved to something's going to change, because I'm not living another day like this without changing something. So I just did what I just looked at, and I was like, I got to pick one thing that's obviously not good and start with that. And so I picked sodas, basically. I was resolved that day, I'm not drinking another calorie ever. And so I started there. And that helped some lung problems. And it helped a little bit, but it took me 9 months to kind of get it under control. Like I didn't drink it, but it was misery for about 9 months. And then after that, I was like, all right, what's the next step? I still craved, I was drinking diet soda still, though. That was a problem too. But I wasn't drinking any calories. I thought that was better at the time because it was just a place to start.
Right.
And then my brother was getting into weightlifting at the time, and he was reading Frank Zane's book. He's a bodybuilder from 70s. And he's like, why don't you try a weightlifter diet? Frank Zane talks about protein and stuff. So it's like, all right, so I did this low fat, high protein, moderate carbohydrate, weightlifter diet. And that was the worst diet I've ever been on to this day. That was the most misery I'd ever been in. There was something about not having fat and in eating just enough carbohydrates to make sure that you wouldn't run off of any stored fat. So I just starved. Like, it was the most miserable. I did that diet for 14 months, and I lost 37 pounds, and I was absolutely suicidal the whole time. Like, I was so out of energy, so miserable, couldn't sleep, didn't have energy when I wake up. I mean, just, there was nothing to live for. Like, there was no joy at all on that whole 14 months. It was miserable. And so I was going to fall off the wagon, but I had made this, I had promised that life or death I was doing this, and I wasn't falling off the wagon this time, And so I started looking up. I thought if I can't, because I couldn't use sauces, and I was eating just dried chicken breast and turkey sausage. Is what I was eating. Yeah, and I did it for 14 months, and I'd lost 37 pounds, right? Like, I was so miserable. And so I was like, I was like, I'm not going to do this any longer. I can't do this unless I can figure out how to at least make this chicken not dry and miserable. And so I looked up online how to make chicken breasts not dry. And it actually came up with sous vide cooking. And so anyhow, long story short, that was pertinent to the story because I was watching this channel called Sous Vide Everything on YouTube. And they kept sous videing these ribeyes seared in butter over and over on this thing. That was like their favorite thing to showcase how to sous vide. So I ordered this sous vide machine for chicken, but I'd seen so many videos on the ribeye. I was like, before I go back to chicken, I'm going to have a ribeye one time sous vide in butter. It just looks so delicious after eating chicken for 14 months. I went to Costco and I bought a 4-pack of ribeyes and some butter. And when my sous vide machine got there, I did the macros. And I was like, all right, for roughly the same calories, because that was all I thought mattered then, I could have a ribeye seared in butter and just eat one a day. And so I ended up eating one ribeye a day for 4 days until that pack was gone, sous vide and seared in butter. And I felt fantastic. My depression had lifted. I had energy. I had mental energy for the first time in forever. I thought it was a placebo effect just from having something that wasn't dry chicken. But my mood was great. But after the end of that 4 days, I'd lost 11 pounds. And I couldn't tell you why. But my body just gave up 11 pounds. And I felt fantastic. And it was such a stark difference. I actually looked up. I'm like, why am I losing weight and feeling better on ribeyes and butter? And that was my first introduction to keto, unfortunately. It was bittersweet because I learned about the ketogenic diets, but also that put me into a 2.5-year run of failed keto because now my mindset was, I can have chaffles and keto pizzas and keto fat bombs and all this stuff. So that put me on a roller coaster. If I would have just stayed with the ribeyes and butter, I would have been fantastic. But unfortunately, I went down the keto rabbit trail. But at least that got me to Jason Fung and Robert Lustig and Gary Taub, and I read all their stuff. And finally, I was fed up of falling off, doing this roller coaster on the keto stuff. And in 2021, I decided and this is no shade on Jason Fung. It's just where my head was at mentally, and I'm a compulsive person back then. I decided I was going to do a 40-day fast and see if I couldn't fix something. And so I started off on a 40-day fast. I made it to day 21. And day 21, I started having asthma attacks, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know what was going on. And what had happened was I was drinking so much water, not taking any electrolytes. I had lost all my potassium, that I'd lost it to a severe enough level that I guess, compromised my blood plasma, and it wasn't holding red blood platelets anymore, so my red blood cell count dropped. And I didn't even know that was possible. But that's what happened. That's why I started having like an asthma attack, because I didn't have red blood platelets. Well, it turns out that really compromises your immune system when that happens. Mm-hmm. So I was in a poor immune state at that time, and that was when I caught COVID. And so that's what got me here, popped through the other side of COVID, and I had congestive heart failure from COVID, and I had what's called COVID long at the time. They told me they didn't know if it was going to heal up. I was sleeping in a chair. At that time, I'd been through this stuff, and my health was deteriorating at quite a rate that I was kind of stuck in a recliner for over 2 years. Like, I slept in a recliner. I couldn't really get out of that recliner. It was too heavy to move. Atrophied. A lot of things happened during that time. And then I had some kind of episode in the night from not breathing, and they think it might have been a stroke. But I woke up, and my oxygen saturation was in the low 60s. I was very disoriented. Something real bad had happened. I just felt sick. And something was very wrong. It took a few hours for me to get my thoughts together and be able to even kind of understand what day it was or where I was at, type of thing. Went to the hospital, and I had gained like 85 pounds of fluid in 3 weeks from congestive heart failure from COVID and COVID lung. And so they pumped that fluid off me over a period of 11 days. And that was when they told me that I had congestive heart failure, that my lungs, they weren't sure. They needed to do more tests on my lungs because they didn't have enough data at that time on what to expect out of COVID lung and what was going to be possible to heal or not. And just had me set up with a bunch of specialists and stuff. When I came home from that, they'd sent me home with home oxygen. I was now on 6 liters of home oxygen, so my lungs weren't functioning. And I was, I forget what you call it, but my heart rate was 107 beats a minute all the time.
Tachycardia?
Tachycardia, yeah. So I had tachycardia, and I had all these prescriptions I was supposed to take, and for everything under the sun. And I had this long list of doctors I was supposed to go see. And I just was thinking of my dad, because I watched my dad go through that. And I just, in the past, none of this system helped my brother, my father, my mother, who had gastric bypass, and my sister who had the lap band surgery. None of that worked for any of them. And I just did not see, I just wasn't going down that road. That was not going to be my future. I was either going to make a change that was going to be real, or I was going to die trying and just get out of here. That was basically where my head was at. And so, yeah, I don't know, and I'm a Christian, so I started in prayer and read my Bible and kind of getting back to the basics. And then carnivore. I just went BBB and E. Finally gave up all the diet sodas I'd been drinking because I thought that was okay, because obviously they have stevia in it, so that's okay and all this stuff. Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, I think it's better, but for me, I didn't get free from the sugar addiction until I got rid of the whole sweet palate. I had to get rid of all of it. But then an amazing thing happened. Just 5.5 weeks into BBB and E and water, I lost all the cravings. Like, all the cravings were gone. All the sugar cravings were gone. The depression, anxiety was gone, and this compulsion to, I don't know, almost like self-medicate with these food endorphin fixes was gone. It just went away, And I was like, oh. So this is, and then I started getting leptin sensitivity back, which I'd never had before. And that was a whole trip that I didn't even understand. And I don't know, it was just crazy. And that was when I finally knew I was onto something, and weight just started coming off. And I mean, it was 4 months in, and I was off oxygen, and my heart rate was down to 68 beats a minute.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, what a story. And you imagine this, Todd. Imagine if you would have done what the doctors said.
I'd be dead. I'm not joking.
You'd be dead. They would have killed you. Nothing against, I'm just saying what it is. The fact of the matter is, the more doctors you go to, the more times you seek our healthcare, it's a sick care system. They love treating sick people. They don't want to heal people. They love treating sick people. And you would definitely be dead. And just by changing your diet, not taking any medications, not going to those specialists, you saved your life.
For sure. I do. And I know that now. I just this is why, when I started realizing and listening to Gary Taub and stuff talk that, our medical treatment is the number 3 leading cause of death.
Exactly.
In our country.
True facts.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, right there is a serious, a serious light bulb moment for anybody that our medical treatment is also the 3rd leading cause of death in our country, just behind, heart disease and cancer.
Yep.
It's like, what does that say?
Well, and you could argue, Todd, that the reason our heart disease is the number 1 killer is because of our medical system. You've got most doctors out there preaching low-fat diets, no butter, no steak, high carbohydrates.
Yep.
I blame doctors for the cardiovascular disease that we have. And do you not think doctors like that? Of course they do. Cardiologists make a ton of money off people having heart attacks.
For sure.
And give them one bypass. 2 years later, give them another bypass. Put stents in. 2 years later, put another stent in. They love it. I mean, seriously. And that's why you have to take charge of your own health. That's our goal of our podcast, to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health.
Absolutely.
And as healthcare professionals, I think we should educate them how to do that instead of just giving another drug or another surgery.
Right. Well, and that's why I do love Steak and Butter Gang, because that's literally all that they do over there. Is they have an open chat over there that goes like 6 hours every day, and it's just carnivores that pop in there and they help new carnivores understand this, because out here in the world still, when you walk around and you tell somebody that you just eat meat and tallow and butter, they lose their mind.
I know.
Yeah, and so everybody's so indoctrinated around you to this sick care system and this big food, big pharma propaganda that they're all asleep to it, and so they they put a lot of you can be influenced a lot by your surroundings. So it's nice in the Steak Butter Gang to be around people that are showing it's not just a bunch of talk; it's huge results, like crazy things healing up. Like I had congestive heart failure healed. Carrie Mann at Homestead Howe had a heart murmur completely healed. Like that's crazy. Jeff DeProsperous, who's had stage 4 cancer for 4 years now, but he's in the best shape of his life fighting it with carnivore and fasting. These guys, these stories in the SBG gang, you see all these huge transfer. Limitless Lemmy down 530 pounds now in 29 months. Michael, the guy that's on our podcast, he's been stuck in his house for 21 years now or something in Chicago at over 700 pounds. He does our IT work and stuff on our podcast, and he's on our podcast with us, but he's down 167 pounds and he's no longer depressed, and he's finally getting his life back. He's probably going to, I told him that we're making a goal to have him at Hack Your Health 2025 in Florida with us, and so I'm definitely going to be trying to pick him up for that. But all these huge life-changing things that are happening is just insane right now.
And what's amazing, Todd, is all the examples that you just gave. The traditional medical system, they would discount every one of them and say, no, it's just anecdotal. That's just, when I've heard so many stories from you and Lindy and Dr. Baker and people curing their psoriasis, their eczema, diabetes, the list goes on, hypertension, the list goes on. And yet doctors will still say that, well, that's just not true. That's not from the carnivore diet.
Oh, I know. I had it out. So on month 6 of my carnivore journey, I was down 205 pounds. I was off the home oxygen. my oxygen saturation was 96% and my resting heart rate was 68 beats per minute, which was, I mean, I was literally a different person than I was just 6 months ago. I was a completely new person. And I had also, from whatever that was, that stroke or whatever, I had lost like I couldn't recall words. I couldn't say full sentences because I was having a hard time recalling. Like there was just something going on in my brain at the time. And that had healed completely. And so my cardiologist wanted to do a checkup with me, a Zoom call checkup. And so I said, okay. And so we're going over this. And mind you, he came and seen me 6 months earlier when I was in the hospital for 11 days. And he told me, he ordered all the tests, the blood work, the medications, told me what my new life was going to look like, which was going to be a life of specialists and medications and checkups and regimens. That was what I was lined out with when I left there. And that was all he talked to me about. 6 months later, when I'm doing the Zoom call with him, I naively still thought that I was going to tell him these fantastic results and he was going to be happy. And he was going to ask me how and be more inquisitive about it. I had this all in my head that it was going to go a certain way. He listened to me say this, and he basically goes, well, that's good, but I got to be honest with you. I'm worried about your diet. That was all he said.
Right.
And
who cares that you lost 205 pounds and that you feel better than ever? Who cares about that? I'm worried about you eating steak. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and I paused for a minute, and I said, I think you are the one that needs medical attention because I don't think your brain's working. I'm sitting here right in front of you, a completely changed man. I was like, if this was a damn pill that had done this, exactly. I would be the poster boy for that new medication.
Yep.
But because it was meat, you're just discarding it. Like, you should at least want to know if what I'm saying is true. You should at least want to double check this because maybe this could help all the other patients that you're dealing with if you were honest about it.
Right. But guess what, Todd? Then he wouldn't have patience. Just like you.
Right.
You're not his patient anymore because you realize that he's ignorant.
100%. I haven't been to a doctor since. I got to go back because I need to get an EKG just to prove that my congestive heart failure is gone. But I know it is because I used to have a tightness in my chest whenever, doing anything, breathing. I was always out of breath. I always had, this huge pulse rate, all that stuff. The color in my face and the life in my eyes again that came back just from this is nuts. If you look at old pictures of me, I was just crazy.
Yeah. Like Janet and I often say, and we teach people, you can do all kinds of crazy labs. You can do all kinds of crazy tests, all kinds of crazy imaging. But you know what the best sign of good health is? Look in the mirror.
Yeah. Seriously.
Look in the mirror. It's no different than Janet was talking about veterinarians. Veterinarians can look at an animal and see if they're sick or not. We as humans, we can see that too. We just got to open our eyes and not rely on labs and tests. It's like, oh, that guy looks better, or that person looks sick. You can tell. It's instinct in us. But that's not what we do anymore in our healthcare system because it doesn't make money.
For sure. 110%. Yeah, I know. And it's really sad, and I think, I know that not every doctor is, evil or sitting there doing this hand wringing and turning us all into, a little profit. A lot of them, it's the healthcare system. It's the indoctrination of our own doctors that's got the, that perpetuates this nonsense that keeps happening. But that I still get a little bit angry about this because, this is why I love Sean Baker and Anthony Chafee and Dr. Kiltz so much and Dr. Philip Vivardi and all these guys that are, that they took their oath to do no harm. They took serious, right? And they saw the writing on the wall and they're standing up and they're saying the truth, despite their personal gain that they could make out of keep letting the status quo go. They're standing up, right? And that, Ken Berry, those guys, that's fantastic. And at a certain point, you can only be complacent for so long without being liable, right? So
I agree with that. There's times too where Shawn and I have, even with doctors that are friends of ours, even just reach out and say, well, how has this been working for us in the last 30 or 50 years? Have we gained anything? Or has the health of our nation gotten worse? And of course, they always say it's gotten worse. Well, what are we contributing to that? Right. I mean, what part of this do we own up to? Because if what we've prescribed or what we've told people to do is not working, that's the definition of insanity if we keep going down that same road. You know, somewhere there has to be, you know, a different way of looking at this. And really, I don't think it was that long ago. You know, I grew up with a little town doc that was, you know, in our community, and he wasn't a pill pusher, you know, and before that, that generation helped their people heal. So we aren't that far away from it. It's just that I think we feel like it's so big around us that we can't move that picture.
Well, exactly. And just, you know, we just as society, we have to stop enabling them by paying them to keep us sick. We have to skip. Yeah, we have to stop giving them our money. And that includes, you know, people ask me why, you know, they're like, so you don't have cheat days now? I'm like, I don't. And this is honest to God true. When I see sugar and crap now, I look at it and I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm going to give money to the enemy so that they can continue to try to fight me and try to make me sick. When I look at sugar now and I look at all this crap that took, you know, 30 years from me, I just look at it and go, I'm not going to put money in the enemy's pocket to keep manipulating us and to keep putting us under their thumb. I'm not going to do that. Like, you know, and that's what I think we really have to recognize, you know, because sugar's packaged in the cereal aisle and in cute little colorful boxes, and it's synonymous with, you know, holidays and birthdays and cute little, you know, pagan nonsense crap that's out there. We don't take it serious that it's, I don't think that there's been any more suffering or loss of life contributed to anything. You know, not even communism has killed as many people as sugar. You know, that's the truth. You know, sugar is caused.
You're right. I mean, 800,000 Americans die of cardiovascular disease every year, largely attributed to, you know, a poor diet. So,
yeah, sugar is absolutely, I mean, fentanyl, all this stuff that everybody freaks out about, it's not killing near as many people as sugar does. It just does it over a long period of time. The amount of life and suffering, you know, quality of life and suffering that sugar takes away from people and inflicts on people, there's no more dangerous drug, in my opinion, than sugar, you know, and it's pushed everywhere. And people think because it's in the grocery store that it couldn't be bad for them. Oh, they would. So, you know, there's always somebody that would do something if it was really that bad, you know, like, oh, somebody would regulate that. Like this whole idea that there's somebody out there that's going to stop bad things from happening.
Right. Let's face it, Todd, that all the evil people, especially government people, were exposed during COVID. They're not out for our health at all. So the further you can get away from the government and not trust their food pyramids, not trust what they tell you to eat, and just liberate yourselves from the government, the better you will be overall.
Right. I know. And so that's why when I talk to people now, I'm just like, they come up and say, well, you're going to have a splurge day for your birthday, right? Or it's Christmas. You're going to have a little sugar for your Christmas. I'm like, would you have a little bit of fentanyl on your birthday? Would you have a little bit of fentanyl on Christmas? Because
I've gotten to debates with people over diabetics. And I got into a debate with a registered dietitian one time, which most registered dietitians that work in hospitals, I would never trust them. They tell people to eat lots of carbs and low fat, no red meat, all this crap, right?
Yeah.
She said that we cannot deny a diabetic their birthday cake. And I said, okay, yeah, I know. It's funny. Actually, it's sad. We laugh about it, but it's sad. I said, okay, we can't deny them their birthday cake. Then let's just deny them their feet, their eyes, and their kidneys. That's fine.
Seriously.
But just be honest with them and tell them we'll deny them their feet, their eyes, and their kidneys. Because that's what's going to happen if they quit denying themselves food.
Absolutely. And it's that was one of the most, one of the most impactful interviews or talks that I heard Sean Baker give when he was describing doing amputations on diabetics, when he was saying that he had a diabetic patient that he had to amputate a leg. And he said, he even described how when he threw it in the garbage, it made an eerie thump sound, And he goes, I never got used to that because I'm taking and throwing somebody's body parts in a garbage can. And he said, when this guy came through, he goes, he thanked me for taking his leg off.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I tried to talk to him about changing his diet so that we could save his other leg. And he goes, oh, I could never quit the sugar, So, I mean, tell me that that's not the most powerful drug, right? I'm like going back to when I was priming and I healed my eyes, my eyebrows grew back, my hair grew back. Something else really crazy happened then too, is I had a 26-year nicotine habit. I had chewed 2 cans of Copenhagen Long Cut pretty much every day or every other day for 26 years. And I had no plans on giving up Copenhagen Long Cut because it was my last thing that I enjoyed and had that way. But when I was priming and my body was healing and my hormones got right, my body made up the choice that I was quitting chewing. And I was like, this is weird, but my body just started rejecting it. Yeah. And on October 26th of 2023, I quit chewing, and it was 13 days of a little bit discomfort, and I haven't looked back since. Like, it is not in my head, completely gone. Not only that, but when I was young, I had a compulsion to gamble, and I had a gambling addiction for a long time. And that monkey never got off my back. I abstained from it and could keep it at bay, but it was always there. When I was going through priming, that whole compulsive nature of mine, which I truly believe was all stemmed from anxiety, which I truly believe was all stemmed from a hormone imbalance, because that was another thing that my doctors never told me in my whole life. After reading Jason Fung's book, I diagnosed myself with probably having low testosterone. And I went in and I had to force them to check my testosterone levels. And it was the lowest levels my doctor had ever seen. It was a total testosterone of 237. He goes, you're the lowest testosterone number I had. So my hormones were absolutely screwed up. My thyroid was absolutely, messed up. And I was absolutely malnourished. And I had to force them to take those tests. But when I fixed that with animal fat, all my compulsive nature that had just dominated me to drink soda and caffeine in large amounts and to have this, need to gamble and anything that would give me an endorphin fix, all those things, that was actually just seemed to be complete medication for anxiety that I was doing there. Because all that melted away. And it's crazy, but I have no propensity to be compulsive like that.
That is so cool.
I'm just completely free from it. I even talked to Dr. Georgia Eid about it. And I'm like, why are we not teaching this to everybody that's having anxiety and depression and addiction issues? But what I can tell you for sure is gambling is one of the worst habits there is to break. It's in like the top 2 to 3 addictions in the books. I can tell you right now that sugar was way harder to quit than gambling or nicotine. By far. Sugar was the hardest one for me to give up. By far. So, it's a drug. And they know what it is. And it's there to make us compulsive and addictive and manipulatable.
There's a lot of people that are addicted to it. That is for sure.
Yeah.
So Todd, as we wind this podcast up, tell us what you have a passion for.
Well, now it's spreading this word because I've had 3 friends commit suicide in the last almost 19, 20 months now. And in my estimation, all they needed was, nutrition. And they were on psych meds and they committed suicide. And that can't keep happening. We can't, these people are trapped in just agony until the only way out they see is to make a terrible permanent decision like that. And we're making money off of that. And I it'd be one thing if we just didn't know better, but I don't think that that's true anymore. I used to think that. And I used to, be able to sleep at night because there's just one of those bad things that happens, but not anymore. Now I realize that we're allowing it to happen for profit. There's powers that be that make profit off of that. And they don't mind it. And I can't imagine that level of evil being unchecked, you know. So now I'm passionate about fighting that. You know, that's why I get kind of worked up about it. This is why I want, you know, I don't mind debates, but I don't mind a fight either about it, because
right. And it's empowering to not let them have control over you.
For sure.
It's very empowering.
Yeah. So that's what I want to do. This has given me more, you know, gave me a future, gave me my life back, but it also has given me more meaning and more focus than anything I've ever had in my life. And this is what I'm doing now. You know, I still, you know, I have my day job and everything, but this is what I want. This is what I want to do for sure. Just get this message out there and help people, you know, help people get back to where we're supposed to be, help us run off of what we're supposed to run on. You know? Absolutely.
So Todd, tell us what the best way to get a hold of you is. If people have any questions, I'm streaming your Carnivore Cure on Twitter right now.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yep. And that is, I'm the Carnivore Cure on Twitter. I am the Carnivore Twitter, or Carnivore Cure on Instagram, and the Carnivore Cure on YouTube as well. But yeah, so YouTube, you can hit me up in there. My emails and the about info on YouTube. It's thecarnivorecure@gmail.com, or pretty much all of the socials. You can find me, and yeah, we're planning on beefing up our interviews in the future here and looking for people. And also, you can catch me at the Steak and Butter Gang too. I'm an admin over there, and you can catch me in the live chats over there. It's such a blessing to have the Steak and Butter Gang open chat as a resource, because I get so many people that call me and they need help, and I can't help them all, but I can send them to the Steak and Butter Gang, and then they're in a community where I see people really get help, and that's where I think they need to be for sure.
I love it. So, Todd, you've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So I thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And hang on after the podcast, I got some questions for you.
Sure.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.